Remember, whatever discipline you're in, whether you're a musician or a photographer, a fine artist or a cartoonist, a writer, a dancer, a singer, a designer, this is what you should do. Make good art.
Hi, this is Creative Soul coming back in May. This is our last episode on Stop Asian Hate podcast. To briefly give you a background information, Stop Asian Hate Challenge is a relay we've been doing for the past 2 months to invite creatives to share their artworks under the theme of racism and the recent Asian hate crimes.
Yes, and today we have invited 2 guests who have participated in our Stop Asian Hate Challenge to hear about, their stories and, their opinions, their experience of racism. So, without further ado, let's meet our guests, Dong and Kelly. Welcome to the show, guys.
Hi.
Hi.
Do you guys want to introduce yourself and, some background information about how you've come to Korea and how you guys were brought up? Just your background information.
You want to start first?
Yeah, I can. So my name is Kelly. I'm an illustrator working freelance here. I came to Korea around 6 years ago after I graduated from university, and I wanted to go to grad school, but I didn't want to go right after I graduated from my undergrad, so I thought it would be a good opportunity to come to Korea. My mom is Korean, but I had never spent a long time here before, so I wanted to kind of take that opportunity, and then I ended up really liking it here. I went to grad school here and then just ended up working here. And yeah, like I said, I'm from a mixed race household, so my mom is Korean, my dad is white, and I grew up mostly in America. So I guess that's pretty much it.
Is it my turn?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not used to these, so I grew up I was born in Korea, but when I was 4 years old, I moved to Thailand. And from then, I just studied school there at a mission school. I lived there for 17 years. I also went to college there. And then, as all Korean males have to go in servitude of the military. So I was forced to come back. But when I came back, my mom, so my whole family moved back after my sister graduated. So my mom then asked me if you want to move to a Korean university. So I tried and I applied to other universities at first, just transfer, but I failed all my transfers. So I just reapplied. And then the first one that came out was KU. And I applied for KU, got there, and then went to military, came back, and I am a free man. Currently. Thank you.
So Kelly, you're an illustrator and Dong, a photographer. How did you guys get into that career? Any specific moment in your life that has impacted you to become an illustrator and be interested in photography and all that?
So I started as a graphic designer, actually. So in middle school, one of my teachers, he just asked me, hey, you want to come learn graphic design? I was like, sure. I don't know, literally, it was just like that. So,
Okay.
yeah. And then I started learning graphic design, and it was very fun at first. So I was like, I want to learn more.
Mm-hmm.
And then it went to cinematography, video editing, and then it went to photography. So I have a mixture of backgrounds. I can do all of them. I'm not a professional. I still categorize myself as a novice because I'm still not at that stage where I can teach someone. So I'm still playing around with it. So yeah, I think that's my background. So I started early on, when YouTube just came out. Me and my friends, we were just playing and uploading videos on YouTube. And I uploaded, play games, recorded it, upload YouTube and stuff like that. And I've done a lot of media work. So that's how I was interested in all of this photography and everything. Especially when I was in high school, we had a photography club.
Yeah.
And all those guys in the photography club, I wasn't part of it, had a camera. And I really wanted that camera for some reason. I so wanted that camera. I asked my dad if he can buy me a camera. But he bought me a camcorder, so it's a totally different thing. And so I played with my friend's camera the whole time. It was fun. So after I finished military, I got interested in photography again. So that's when I like, okay, I have the cash now. The cash I like saved during military. I'm gonna buy a camera. So after buying a camera, now I go around just taking pictures, and I also use them for graphic design. So yeah, that's my story.
Yeah, I think, well, how you get into any field, I guess for some people it's very straightforward. Like they go to school for it and then graduate and get a job in that field. I think, though, for a lot of people in creative careers, it can also be very random, or you just follow
Like the
an
teacher.
interest. Yeah. You just follow an interest. So, I mean, we all grew up with computers. I think I learned to use Photoshop and stuff in like middle school, just like playing around. But, you know, even though I liked visual art, I didn't take that seriously as a career. I was very like, I should be practical, like go, you know, to grad school, all this stuff. But when I was in grad school here, actually, I mean, I would just draw for fun, but I got kind of like a part-time job illustrating these articles for like this blog or like small Korean company like that was making posts and stuff. So I did that for a while, but then I started getting a commission to do other things. And then I was making pretty good money just doing that, so I just kept doing that. And then I also got really interested in printing, doing silkscreen artwork, and then doing other kind of like things that are not so digital, because I draw a lot digitally, but I think when you do that, you kind of miss some of the tactile experience of making something. And I don't really like how digital printing looks that much, so I like having kind of control over that process a bit through printing, or now I'm like making books and stuff, doing some other kind of craft type work. So yeah, that's kind of been, I guess, the way that I ended up doing illustration, but it's been kind of random, I guess.
And talking about artworks, we really, first of all, really thank you, both of you, for participating in the relay. And so what were you guys kind of motivated by or like inspired by to create your artworks really regarding the Stop Asian Hate challenge?
Like what was the thought processes like that went into creating this artwork that you guys posted?
Yeah, I could go first. For me, I kind of didn't want to make like a broad general statement. I feel like whenever I would read other people's I guess thoughts and stuff on it, the things that stood out the most to me were people who spoke from their personal experiences, or kind of just didn't try to speak for others, just kind of spoke from their own experience. So for me, when this hashtag, I guess, was coming up more, and it was just in the media and in social media more. It made me think a lot about my mom's side of the family and their experience, because they have that very typical like immigrant story. My grandparents moving from Korea to the U.S. in like the 70s, and then kind of just like trying to assimilate and become American, and I think in our generation, people are much more outspoken about their experiences of racism and stuff. But I think in like my mom and my grandparents' experience, they kind of just had that mindset of like keep your head down and like just kind of blend in and make it work and try to like achieve, a good life, whatever that meant to them. So I was thinking a lot about what their expectations might have been, like this American dream kind of thing when they moved, and how a lot of immigrants must feel when they're trying to move to a new place for changing their life in some way that they must think is going to be positive. And then, the disappointment too when you realize there are challenges that come with that as well. So, yeah, that's where I guess I drew inspiration from. And I was also listening to a lot of Kim Jong-mi around that time. So she's an artist from like the 70s, and like a lot of her music is kind of like nature themed, but there's one song called Your Dream. And even though it's not talking at all about like immigrant experiences, just kind of the mood and the title of it reminded me a bit of that theme. So yeah, pretty much it.
How about you,
Yeah,
Dom?
what about you?
For me, so I know my concept art would look like pretty, or unpretty. Okay, so the idea of it was like how the overall voices for Stop Asian Hate was very minuscule. Actually, we heard a big bang, and then it like the speed in which it like disappeared was really fast. It's not even like it's only been like what 2 months since it happened, and it's already almost gone. We barely hear about it anymore. So I was afraid about that when I was making the poster, and how our voices are diminishing at a very fast pace and very fast rate. So that was the concept idea for this poster. So it's on a asphalt, like on a road, a dirt road, where the poster of Stop Asian Hate is already stomped on. It's rusty, and the words for like preservation are almost unreadable anymore. So I was kind of like stating an idea that if we stop now, this is what it's gonna look like, and if we keep on speaking, someday someone will actually look, and actually we will actually be able to make some changes. And that was the general idea for the poster. As you can see, I don't know, I don't want to say it, but it kind of became reality.
Yeah, you predicted the future.
I know, it's sad. I didn't want it to be like this, but, you know, in some part of me, I think I knew it would happen again. Because the Asian hate thing, it's always been there. It always existed. It's just that people never actually really looked through it before. So, like, I understood it would happen, but I'm kind of at the same time conflicted that it actually did happen. So, as a person, also as a Korean, how do I get my voices? How do I get these voices out? It has been a question for me. So that's why you see very, like, hazily the "Don't Stop Believing," but it's almost unreadable, because that's an idea I want to believe that we can still hold, that we can stop this. Yet, I guess in an aspect of mine, even I'm also losing hope that it could change. So that's the general idea of how I came up with the poster.
Well, in terms of individuals making changes, do you believe in that? Do you think individuals, like creatives, can make a change? Like, if possible, then, or like, how do you think we can raise our awareness, or what do you do in your daily life to kind of maintain that attention?
I think individuals can make a difference. I mean, obviously not in like raising a movement of people and like marching, like that's very specific to activism. But for artists, I think it helps a lot to just speak about your experiences and like acknowledge the reality of what happens to you, and to call out when you see something uncomfortable or racist or whatever it is, discriminatory happening to others as well. Like, I think that's a big part of it, because like being, I guess, just trying to smooth things over, not cause waves, that kind of thing is the type of attitude that makes it easy for people to keep acting discriminatorily and, voicing, saying hurtful things, acting in violent ways or hurtful ways, when people at least acknowledge the situation that this is a problem, then you can make some change. But I think that's been a problem for a long time, is like a lot of discrimination against Asian people is maybe not so in your face, so it's easy to ignore and people just brush it off. But I think if you don't brush it off, and as artists you can speak or display your opinion visually or otherwise, I think that helps a lot in making other people feel more comfortable about even just talking about the problem. Because until you acknowledge it exists, you can't really do much.
I just want to add on is like how, as she said, one person might not have a big effect, but I don't think a lot of people are looking for a big, huge impact. It starts with a ripple, I think. Everyone could be metaphorically categorized as a droplet of water in a large body of water. You put one drop, but the ripples it make is actually quite huge, but we don't see it at first. It goes out slowly and very, very calmly. I think that's what we should be aiming for, actually, because we can't actually change everything at like one point of singularity. It doesn't work that way, especially in a society where like everyone has their own idea, everyone has their own stance and point of perspective. It's very difficult. But what we can do is speak it out. Make sure it's always spoken. It's not kept in the quiet zone for long periods of time. I think this happened because a lot of Asians were quiet about it a lot of times. It was more like the stick it up, like just get over it kind of thing. That I think, I don't know, but most like I don't know, but Korean families, they're more like, if you have a problem, just keep it. Don't speak about it. Yeah, keep it to yourself. My family was a bit different. So my dad was like, if you have a problem, say it. My mom was like, if you have a problem, don't speak with me. Because I have problems bigger than you. So yeah. So my 8th grade syndrome didn't win against her, like, what, Kim Young-gi? What do you call that?
Midlife crisis.
Yeah. So my mom's midlife crisis was a more bigger threat than my 8th grade syndrome. So I guess my mom won. So yeah, my family was a bit open, thankfully. So like we still talk now a lot about a lot of stuff. But when I came to Korea, the first thing I found out was how no one speaks like about sensitive issues a lot, and that was something that I was disappointed when I first came back to Korea. And I think it starts with that. I think we have to get it open now. It has to be spoken.
Yeah, like I totally get it, because I think like in Korea, just like what you guys said, it's like if it's a sensitive topic, if it's going to, create some kind of backlashes or some kind of controversy, people just avoid talking about it, having their voice in this kind of issues. Do you guys talk about that with your family? Not at all? Or like, personally in your daily life?
About
like, I mean, not just racism, but like these kind of sensitive, like societal issues.
Yeah. So every week. So yeah. So I don't know, but for me, every Saturdays is family day.
Wow.
So we would always meet with me. I have a sister too, so it's us four always every week Saturdays. We have lunch. We go to cafes, and the first thing we do is talk about anything, political issues, current news, the problems, and like I would point out my perspective, and my mom would point out her perspective, and my dad would be like whatever. He would speak about his perspective, but it's dads. Dads are like, they like to talk about themselves more, and they're at that age. I don't know, dads. Yeah, and my sister, she's like the mediator of everything. So she's the smartest person in our family. So she like mediates everyone. So yeah. So we talk about it a lot, and I think that's a good start, talking with the family first.
True.
Yeah, I mean, I talk to my family about some things, but also I don't live close to them, so it's not like I would meet up with them every week and like have a powwow. I think when we talk on the phone, it's more about like our personal lives, not really societal issues. Like I kind of care more about, I guess, how they are personally than like discussing politics with my family. But those things I like more so talking with my friends or like people close to me that I can see in person, I think. Because I think it's also to have those kind of conversations, it's really helpful to be in the same room as someone else and not on the phone. I think it makes a big difference.
What are how are your experience with like racism, just generally like in Korea or just in another country? What was your experience like?
Well, for me, it was like, well, I'll talk about how, I'll start with Korea because I like to criticize my own country and my countrymen for some reason. I criticize everyone and everything,
Yeah.
so I guess, but I also don't run away from criticism myself, so I think that's a good thing. So the first thing I realized, because I'm technically a overseas Korean, I lived like education 12 years, Korea, out of Korea, came back. There was a lot, like when I first came to university, I could feel the presence of everyone running away from me, like
Yeah.
normal
Really?
Koreans.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I know they didn't do it on purpose. That's definitely, but it's because my personality and the way I speak is very different. It was very hard to actually personally connect and be friends with Koreans, like those who grew up in Korea. So even now, most of my friends are like overseas Korean, the ones I made in university, or like 동아리 people. In 동아리,
Yeah.
you get friends.
Yeah.
So in 동아리, so I'm in a Christians Bible studies group. That group, I was able to make friends, but it was still difficult to overcome that barrier of being an overseas Korean because it was still hard to properly connect with them because what I think and what they think are totally different. What I've experienced and they've experienced totally different. So it becomes a more involuntary act of, I guess, discrimination. They don't know it. They don't know it. It's just that they grew up differently. I grew up differently. We don't know. I think that's the start of how I was more like segregated in Korea, I guess, between normal Koreans. I know, harsh words. And most of my experiences with racism actually comes during my military career. And the one thing I realized while being a Katusa is that if you don't speak English, you're considered a bad Katusa for some reason because you can't speak English. And
Isn't that one of the criteria?
yes,
that
it's
when
one
you
of the criteria.
apply for Katusa, you gotta be good at English.
Yes, but remember, we only take the written exams and then apply. So not all Koreans are actually fluent in speaking English. But still, most of the hard work and labor is actually done by Katusas. It's very ironic. So because I was in one of the main focal operations department, I get to go around different sections and have to work with a lot of different sections actually. And because thankfully I was able to communicate a lot, I was efficient in my work. So I had a lot of protection from a lot of the U.S. Army counterparts. But the thing is, not everyone had the same privilege as me. I could see the difference of how other U.S. troopers treated other Katusas who couldn't properly speak or had hard time getting acquainted with their workspace. And they would never call them by name. So it's, hey, Katusa. Hey, you short Katusa, come over here. And they would say stuff like, it's because you guys are weak that we have to come to your country. And I know it's from high-ranking officers that says this, high-ranking NCOs that says the same thing. And after we have these training exercises for 2 weeks and stuff like that, there was one time we came back into the base, and there was this one staff sergeant, and then he screamed out to one of us, one of my friends. We were at the same group, and he's like, "Hey, you! Yeah, you with the long face." And he starts talking mocking our face and how your eyes are small so you can't see, and yeah, stuff like that. I've heard a lot actually. And it's not only as a Katusa, I also see how other Asian Americans in the U.S. Army are also discriminated. I've never seen many Asian American soldiers be close with other actual white or blacks. I'm sorry, but yeah, because they're never allowed in the group for some reason. They're never considered as proper soldiers, so they're always pushed away. I've seen this a lot, and there was one time where Katusa was sexually harassed. Yes, sexually harassed by a U.S. soldier. And what they did to the U.S. soldier was just moved him to another base. Usually you'll be court-martialed and you would be suspended from active duty for a while. But no, they just moved him to another base. That happened before. I know it's quite long, but thank you.
I think the thing that you mentioned at the beginning about how being an overseas like Korean and how all the struggles, I think I resonate with that so much because I'm an overseas Korean as well. I was educated in an international school in China most of my life, and then I went to the UK, and like it is difficult. Like I feel the the discrimination against those people as well. Like I still feel it. It's not just in universities. I think a lot of areas of our lives, I still get that experience in my during work as well. And yeah, I think because of the way we were brought up was really different. Our mindset, our values in life, and our the way we see things, it's really different. And I think I struggled quite a lot as well. I think a lot of, probably most of the overseas Koreans feel like the same thing. That kind of got me, have this question of, where do I belong? I always had this feeling, the way that I was educated, it was British, I received British education, but I'm too foreign to be considered, part of their local communities.
Yeah, that's true.
But at the same time, I don't think I ever felt like I belonged to the Korean communities in the UK. So I'm just in the middle, I don't feel the sense of belonging anywhere. Yeah, so I've had that kind of experience as well. But yeah, I just wanted to add that, I totally understand.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I would categorize my experiences similar to yours in that I think I've realized from, living different places in America and then moving here that you can't really base your identity or sense of belonging on how other people feel about you in that space. It's you have just as much right to be I am Korean and I also have this background, but it doesn't mean I'm less Korean just because other people might feel awkward around you. That, I guess that's their personal problem. That's their personal problem or whatever. If they, aren't used to maybe interacting with someone who comes from a different background or meeting someone with a more diverse background who's also Korean. But yeah, I think for me in America, growing up in a smaller suburb in Texas, I was just Asian. So even though I'm mixed, most people in my community were just white. So if you were any minority, even mixed or whatever, you definitely weren't white. So you're just in that other category. And then I also didn't really feel connection to the Korean community, especially because it's very much based in at least in where I grew up in a church, and I was not part of the Korean church thing. My family is just not a part of that community. So yeah, I didn't really vibe with that. Most of my friends were from other Asian backgrounds or Indian or Somalian or just, from other cultures as well. So they kind of also understood that. And then I moved to California, and that was probably the best experience in terms of a sense of belonging just because it's so diverse. In LA, there's a lot of mixed people. There's a lot of people who come from different backgrounds, and people are just used to it. They don't really... You don't really feel like you're being categorized that much because people just are more exposed to there's so many different kinds of people. And then obviously moving here, it's very much the opposite of that where, of course you'll find diversity anywhere, but in Korea, it makes sense. Most people come from a Korean background and grew up here most of their life, and that's totally fine. But you definitely feel that sense of difference more keenly because if you're not from that background, it just naturally stands out more. So I know, it's very unlikely that people would consider me Korean, but I can't base my identity on how people guess where I'm from when they first see me. A lot of people think I'm Japanese when they first meet me. I get that a lot, or just general foreigner. But with the mask on, I get a lot of people think I'm Korean when I'm wearing the mask, or from behind. They'll ask me directions and stuff. So yeah, I totally get where you're coming from. Just that it's hard to base your identity on something when, especially when you move and you're like, well, I don't fit in here or here. So like, how do I define that exactly?
Yeah, I think it's similar. Like UK is also a country with a diverse range of people, raised, from different cultures. There are loads of international students. So even though I felt that sense of, discrimination, I think it wasn't that difficult for me to kind of like just get myself together and, just went on with my life, being okay with just not belonging anywhere, being okay with, who I am, and I think it wasn't that difficult for me, but when I came back here, it's like because of how the society and the people here are so, it's very like unified, it's very united, and a lot of people like consider the way that I behave, the way that I think, the way that I talk, all that is somewhat different to typical Koreans, right, and somewhat foreign. So I've had loads of people asking, try to fit into the society, like you have to behave in certain ways. Don't do that. People are gonna think that's weird, and how people care so much about how other people perceive themselves. But I mean, so there was a period where I was really like stressed about that, and the pressure coming from that. But I think now I'm at a point where I'm okay, and I'm okay with all of that. Like I kind of have that belief in myself, having different culture inside me, that's what makes us so unique, that's like the core of who I am, I think, and I don't need like validation or acceptance from other people for being who I am. And yeah, that's the kind of conclusion. Like I don't mean that, I disrespect the culture here, I don't like the culture, but I don't think anything should be forced, on me to the point where, I have to change myself to kind of fit into the society as someone who's not really me,
Yeah.
And I think what I came to realize that what's really important is the fact that I care about how, like, my own belief and my own opinion of myself, that, like, that's the most important thing. And, like, yeah, that's I think that's the conclusion that I've come to realize, I think, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's hard when, especially if someone tells you, like, don't do this because it's weird. Like, I think now, though, I think in Korea it is because, there are more overseas Koreans. And, I mean, just international travel in general. Well, maybe not right now. But people coming from different backgrounds, there is slightly more diversity. And it's becoming more normal, just even among Korean people, like people who have lived abroad or grown up somewhere else or whatever that may be, or who are mixed, like, and born in Korea and grew up in Korea. Like, I know I have friends who have kids, like young kids, and they're now of mixed backgrounds, and those kids are going to grow up in Korea, or maybe they'll go move somewhere else. I don't know, but I do think that will change a little bit over time, and people will kind of have to accept that that's also Korean. Like, there's not this, very strict definition of what a Korean person is. Like, and I think that is kind of hard to wrap your head around, too, when you, when the culture has been really, I guess, more, just homogenous until recently. But I think it's good to just accept that people have differences, and obviously not every Korean person is going to act the same way.
No,
so
true,
you should just accept that. Yeah.
As a creative, what is one thing, or it can be many things, I think, what are the things that keep you motivated?
That's a very hard question. Because I'm the type of guy who's like, don't think for about a while, like for a long time, and then it pops in my head like, ooh, let's make this. I usually do that. So most of the artworks I did and pictures I take was usually just I got a spark, and then I'm like, oh, I have to do it now, and then I have this long term of doing nothing, or just thinking and imagining, oh, what should I do? That's usually how I think.
Yeah.
But I think I get a lot of influences from media, from my family, from my friends, their movies and stuff like that. So I get a lot of references from there. So a lot of my work, there are a few references in between my work, and it's because I have that I might be thinking, oh, maybe I can make it with my twist. Maybe I can take a picture of this with my perspective and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think there's like two sides. Like, a lot of times we wait for like, oh, I need to be inspired to like do something, and that can be really, motivating and exciting. But recently, I kind of feel like I haven't like my approach to get motivated is just to not wait to feel motivated, to just keep making things, and then it's kind of like if you make enough things, some of them will be good and you can use them or whatever. But I guess just not to be too perfectionistic about it, because I've found like if I try really hard and like get stuck on making something perfect, I'm never going to finish it. And then also I'm just like going to be discouraged from making things because I'm waiting to like for some feeling or for some perfect thing to happen. So yeah, I've kind of just found like it's nice to enjoy the process of making something and like be less focused about whatever the final product is going to be, and to know that if you keep making things, like some of them you will like, or you might discover something interesting while you're just playing around, and that's kind of when you enjoy making things the most, I think, when you're enjoying the process of it, not trying to rush to the finish line of like what it's going to be.
As a creative regarding artist activism, what do you think your role in that is, if there are any?
Like, it's a big question. I know quite a few really amazing artists who, like my friend Ashley Lukachevsky, we went to university together, and she's like a really outspoken artist and activist who a lot of her art is about like Black Lives Matter or political issues and stuff like that. For me, I feel like I'm not so much in that category of like someone whose work is specifically focused on that topic, but I hope that for me, just maybe being more honest about my own experiences and in that way, in that small way, maybe making a difference. But yeah, I don't really consider myself as like a super outspoken like activist whose art is all about that, but hopefully can contribute in a small way here and there. How about you?
That's great. Well, it's because me too. I'm not an activist, but I'm more of a passive, and I'm more of the work in the background type of guy. So this is probably the first time I've actually openly became involved in kind of activist work. But in my character itself, I'm more of the person who stays at the back and then explains to the people who don't understand what's going on. And I think I'm one of those voices. I would consider myself as the BGM. The BGM. Everyone's like, ooh. But like no one actually considers it unless you're really interested. It's like, ooh, that sounded really nice. Maybe I should like search for it. But usually in the movies and stuff like that, we don't actually look for BGMs, right? Usually we look for the title songs and the actual like real like music and stuff like that, not the very cozy and like soft, calm BGMs. I consider myself that kind of guy. So I'm there, but not in a way that people can perceive as a big involvement. But I'm still there nonetheless. A small voice that will talk about this, because I think it's now more of a responsibility, I think. As a person involved with these and a person who experienced racism firsthand, it's better to talk about it with people who've never experienced it or doesn't know about it or doesn't care about it. Because once they start knowing, it's not that they should know, but they should have a general idea of what's going on. I think that's how I can help.
Yeah, because also some people won't notice those things unless they first like. I can understand to a certain point where if you grow up and you've never experienced that kind of discrimination, you would just not notice it because it's not being directed at you or like whatever, you can ignore it. But if someone brings it up to you, then you naturally would start to notice it more, and then you can speak about it or, support others. I kind of am on the same wavelength as you. Kind of, I like sharing when I see someone else like say something really poignant or like make a good point. Kind of using social media or platforms like that, where maybe you have a small following because of your artwork, but you can also use stories or posts to direct attention elsewhere to people who are devoting their lives more fully to activism and those topics. So,
I mean, like, have you ever been asked, it's like, why is your English so good? Like, I think a lot of, like you guys would have been asked questions like that. So I've been asked questions almost by everyone in my, like, 동아리, like, club. So it's become, like, speaking English for me, it's like my first language. It's I don't know what most people would think, but for me, it's my first language. And saying your English, it's good. Where did you learn it? I'm like, where did you learn Korean? I want to say that, but I can't.
In context too, it's like I feel like it would be even more complicated, like living here, because it's like. And being Korean, too, because it's like, okay, I guess that assumption isn't completely wrong. Like, they maybe just think I just grew up here. But to you, it's like, well, of course I speak English well. Like, I spent 17 years of my life speaking English. So,
it's like that. It's like helping them understand that by slowly saying, to me, English is my first language and Korean would be considered my second language. Explaining these little things will at least change their perspective a little bit when they ask the next question who can speak English or where they're learning English, like that.
Yeah. I think that's a good point. And like the background, like it doesn't have to always be this big production of like I'm doing activism. It can be like just taking the time to like explain to someone or like maybe hedge their assumptions a little bit, make them think, oh, like maybe next time I won't assume or I'll just ask someone maybe more about themselves before I'm like, why is your English so good? You never know.
I think like only a few years ago I thought the sentence your Korean is really good, like saying that to foreigners was I actually thought that as complimenting him or her, but then now that I think of it, it's like it could be a really uncomfortable sentence to some people, and that's why I think more before I actually say something.
I actually, that's funny that you say that, because I think I had this conversation with someone. Well, first of all, I hear that a lot, but I don't really take offense, because that's like, whatever. But I was thinking about it, and I was like, oh, I guess it does make sense that like some people might feel offended by that if they've like. Because some people have lived here for like 15 years, and of course their Korean's really good. Like, especially like for me, maybe I take it for granted sometimes that I can live here with my visa. But some foreigners who have to who live here for a long time and get residency, they have to jump through a lot of hoops to be able to, and part of that is learning the language. Just like in America, I would never tell someone like, "Oh, your English is really good," because they're maybe have a slight accent, or maybe they are an immigrant or something. It's like, well, they moved their whole life to America. Like, of course they learned English, and that's great. But it's funny to think of it from the other side.
If there is anything like we want to talk about, we can carry on. If you want to say anything, like if you want to add anything, feel free to.
I wanted to ask you guys, how has your experience been like running the relay and stuff?
Oh yeah, that's a good question.
And has anything surprised you, or how has the experience been in general?
I had someone tell me that they were like, I believe in I believe in what we're trying to do, but like they don't think social media is a suitable place to make that substantial change when it comes to societal issue. It will disappear, and it's not going to be worth effort basically.
But then if not social media, then what else? Like what other platforms?
Yeah, I think that's a bit silly because, well, first of all, there have been studies about, because in university I studied international relations, and one of the classes I took was about social movements. And a few of the ones that we read research papers about were specifically about people using not even necessarily social media, but like, technology and sending messages in certain ways. And social media obviously could be a big part of that. I don't think it's been around enough for there to be that many studies about it. But I think it is very substantial to like spread information, obviously. Like, honestly, that's how I hear about a lot of things. And probably how I first heard about like the Stop Asian Hate movement and, the original incident and all of that was through Instagram and people I follow posting things, posting news. I don't really read the news that much just because it's a lot. So, yeah, I think it's a little bit short-sighted that it's not a place to talk about these things. I understand if someone doesn't feel comfortable personally doing it, but I think overall it can be a really powerful tool. So, yeah, it's interesting.
I think in the long run, education has to also have some requirements of teaching students and young people about different races. And that's an important factor too. And in hindsight, the Korean education system is quite behind schedule when it comes to these civil matters around the world. So it'll take time, but someone has to keep pestering, and it's usually the quiet guys who keeps on the pesterings. Is because we keep talking about it, and it's those guys and it's those people. Change comes, but people have different perspective on change too. For some people, change has to come right away. It has to be like a snap, like how Thanos snapped everyone around the world. If you guys watch the movie, okay, spoilers. But for some people, this change can take slow. It's a slow process. But someone has to do the base work. Someone has to build the foundation. And building the foundation, it's not easy. It takes time. It takes effort.
I was also going to say, like you're mentioning before, the drops in the ocean. I think it's a lot easier to be a drop in the ocean through social media because you can spread something. You don't have to come up with an original idea all the time. You can help, disseminate an idea that catches on. And I know we were saying before, it can be disappointing that maybe this trend on Instagram is not as big as it was for a month or so, that it was super popular. But I don't think that diminishes the impact it has because, now it's all in our collective consciousness of these things circle back to with Black Lives Matter originally, that was quite a while ago, but then, it comes up again and it continues to come back into our consciousness and on our screens as we surf social media because people are sharing and people are, speaking up, maybe not through their own posts, but, through sharing what they see. So
it's repetition. Trump does it well, but in his case, it's a bit different. But repetition is important. It's about keep going. I think just don't stop believing. That's one of my catchphrases for my poster. It's because I know there's going to be change. It might not be now. It might be 10 years or 20 years. It could be 30 years. But just as how Martin Luther King, he never envisioned change would come quickly. He never did. But he still tried because he knew by the time his grandchildren might grow up and stuff like that, they will live in a better society than what he had to go through. But I don't think he never expected change right now. And I think that's a tragedy. But he would probably, he would not be content, but he would still be happy seeing the world changing. I think we're still in the process of understanding. Because globalization happened. It's very recent. A lot of people don't understand it, but this phenomenon is very recent. It takes time for people to understand. It's going to take a while. But I know it's coming. Change is coming.
Yeah, people think 10 years is a long time, but in the context of history and movements, it's actually very short. And if you even look at the past 10 years in terms of the discourse on racism, things that people thought were okay to say in 2010 or 2011, people are getting, canceled on Twitter or whatever for their old tweets from that time. And it's just crazy to see what people thought was socially acceptable that now we would never accept. And so I can imagine in 20, 30 years, it will only be even more different. And while that may seem like a long time, and it is too long, it's also in the context of history like very short. So yeah, I feel not. I don't feel disappointed by
Yeah.
that things might take a little bit longer than we hope sometimes.
I mean, totally. I think I agree that the conversation needs to continue. It has to, especially in a country like Korea, where people don't really discuss about these societal issues. I think it's so important, even if it's like on a smaller scale, even if we're talking to a smaller audience. I think it's important that we talk about it, having conversation. I think that's how we raise awareness of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen that much. I mean, maybe just because I'm not looking for this type of news or it's not popping up on my news feed. I haven't seen that much on the discourse of like racism in Korea so much besides like people's personal experiences. But have you guys seen any like, I don't know, that coming up more, people talking about it, or is it kind of just something that people aren't really that interested in?
It's something like that's something that I realize well as when it comes to like racism. You know how like in Western media it's a big thing, and whenever the incidences happen, like it's like hitting the headlines, right? Like the news, it's a really big thing. But like if you look at the website, the Naver, whatever, it's just like one line at the corner. Yeah,
it's only reported if the person who is Korean is affected. Especially like the shooting in the sauna and stuff like that. It was because they were Korean. It got reported. If it wasn't Korean, they would just mention it like, oh, this happened in the U.S.
I feel like and Koreans are really ignorant. They could be really ignorant, including myself. So that is one of the reasons why I'm doing Creative Soul as well. It's kind of like a reminder for myself to keep the attention and to kind of always try to raise awareness at least. Because if not, then, well, honestly, I don't talk about racism a lot with my friends or my family members because, well, it's just not a topic that's brought up often. I don't know why. Maybe because of education, and I was mostly raised in Korea. Yeah, but it's the least thing I can do, I guess, to kind of make this kind of platform and to hear more, be willing to hear more about from others. Yeah.
Yeah, like that's the same reason for me. Like I don't talk about it. If I don't talk about it here, I don't talk about it. But it matters. It does matter. It's important that we are educated about this kind of issue, and yeah, that's why we are doing this. We want to raise the issue and the conversation that's not really happening.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I think I said before, like it can be very homogenous, like, but that's not really true in terms of like, I mean, maybe the percentages, I don't know what they are, but there are a lot of people who immigrate to Korea as well, or there's like Chinese Koreans too. That's a community, as well as like people who get married and come here and maybe have difficulties, or I don't know, but yeah, it'd be interesting to hear more people's perspectives, because to be honest, like from those communities, I don't know that much. I know, I guess, just personal experiences from people that I know, but it's always nice to hear how other people think about these things while living here or elsewhere.
Yeah, definitely, because I mean, even though we're like all Asian, individual like experience on it is really different. Like they're all really different. So I think it's important that we create a platform or a place where they can share their experience.
We have to also understand that we just don't know. We have to accept the fact that we don't know. We're not as smart as a lot of media says humans are smart, but I don't know. To me, the mankind is a bunch of idiots that just happened to make fire. And we were able to use fire for everything else in between. But yeah, I think we have to accept the fact that we are ignorant to some point at a certain stance. we have to be open. We have to be open to change. I talk with my grandma, and grandmas, they don't like to change. They're at that stage where their ideas and their way of life is complete.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult to push an opinion to my grandma.
Yeah.
For 2 years, my grandma would talk about how I live like a girl. In her standpoint, yeah. Yeah. Yes.
What?
2 years.
What does that mean?
I've been
I mean, what is
because
that?
I'm very interested in interior designing. So I decorate my room and stuff like that, and and I clean my room. I don't know, but my grandma, I think that's not what a guy should do.
Like a gender role.
Gender roles and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So for her, I understand. I understand. For her, it's already almost too late, because for her, she lived with that gender role. She was forced into the role too, and it's hard for her to change. But it's not the same for young people. Young people, they're more open. They're still at the stage where they consume a lot of information. If one of that information happens to relate with either racism, sexism, or any other very sensitive topics, it could be a point where there could be a point where people can start talking about it. One person don't have to talk about everything, but if they are able to actually speak something, at least one of a sensitive topic, I think that's a good future. I think that's good.
I struggle to speak to my family as well.
It's not easy. It's not easy.
Yeah, and I think there's like more probability of making a change if we speak to a younger generation, and because they're the ones who will have to I mean, obviously us as well, but like they're more flexible. So yeah, I think it's important that we talk about younger generation, talk to younger generation. I think there's no chance, like hardly any chance that people who lived 60, 70 years believing one thing, to change their opinion or belief on it. So.
Yeah, I think the best you can do is just have them accept that this is how people are now, and like they don't have to think that way, but other people do. But I think what you were saying earlier about like education, like educating kids about more about like racism, discrimination, like best practices to even like speak out if someone they witness something. I think that can be more important than trying to change like older people's minds. Of course, it's good to have a discourse with your family and stuff, but yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like people in our generation and like younger are more so the people who are going to be making those changes, not older people. And if there's more of us who believe that or who are interested in that, then we can kind of put pressure on older people to, listen to us through voting or other means of, wanting to get our attention or our support, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think because I work in media as well, and I think because loads of people consume a lot of content, and I think it's so important that because how kids are going to watch that and they're going to learn from that, right? So I think as a person who works in media industry and as creators who's going to create all this content they're going to consume, I think it's important that we change the content we reproduce, like the diversify the roles. For example, the animation, the cartoon, they're all like white. The main characters are white, right? But it's we should diversify those and the narratives that we portray as a person working in media. I think that's really important. Yeah. Speaking of education.
Yeah, I think media is going to play an important role.
Yeah.
Especially now.
Yeah.
After post-COVID would be like I think it's going to be the new media era. A lot of things will start going through the media now because a lot of things actually happening on media. Media consumption has skyrocketed and because of this, and it's going to stay like this for a while until something new happens. But I think this is the time when we can, use this opportunity to have something a bit better, something worth discussing, something that to keep them interested. Oh, I just remembered something. I remember this article talking about 살색.
Yeah.
Oh.
Skin color.
So there was this in Korea before people were educated in different colors. So they had like, so there was like white, black, and stuff like that. And there was this, I forgot that color's name now. I think it's cream or like ivory. I don't remember.
Yeah.
But like 10 years ago, children would call it skin color.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
That was the official apparent
No.
name for.
That's kind of like the foundation thing
Yeah.
in America, like the foundation that's called like
Mhm.
nude or something, but it's
Oh,
just
yeah.
like white, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. But the government, after a few years, the government got involved and they now changed the word for that in education. So students are not allowed and teachers are not allowed to call it sarsek anymore.
Mm.
So it happens. Change does happen if you see it like that.
Mm.
It just takes time. Be patient, people.
Yeah, I guess it reaches a level that's just like, oh, everyone kind of feels like this is socially unacceptable, and it's kind of through these like social media things or like, you know, broader maybe just people talking about it and being like, you know, this makes me uncomfortable. This makes a lot of people uncomfortable. For people to realize like, oh, maybe that's not a great idea. Maybe that is a bad look for us. Like in our own best interest, we shouldn't keep doing it this way, you know. So yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't heard about that.
I remember using that crayon, sarsek crayon, and you know, like when I was in elementary and you go to classrooms and there are drawings by children, then all of the skin colors are the same. It's this
It's-
light,
yeah.
it's
Yeah.
brighter than this type of color, when in fact Koreans don't have that skin colors. It's really ironic in a way.
I was gonna say like this is kind of maybe I don't know. Now we're on this topic, so but I wonder if you guys had like opinion about that in Korea. I mean, obviously, it's people know like people like to look white or like look more pale. And there's usually not that many foundation colors or like in terms of makeup. And I mean, it kind of makes sense to a certain extent, but also, you know, you can get tan too, like even though it's not maybe very, well now though, there are some models who are more tanned and some singers too, right? So I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that, like I guess the discourse around skin color kind of changing in Korea. Beyond crayons, but
Crayons. Still not sure because a lot of people still think being white is good. It happened like a few weeks ago in my tongari. It happened in my tongari, okay? So there was this person who came into our tongari just to visit, and she had pale skin, even for a Korean. And then one of the members in my tongari, she just said, "Why is your skin is so white? It's good." But like, I remember like a few months ago, like when that person and me first met, and she was like, "Why are you black?" It was a very negative tone. It's like, I mean, is it wrong to be a bit dark skin tanned? But that idea is still persistent. It's a bit. I know they're talking about the Korean standpoint, view, and perspective, but still, if you talk about overall, it just sounds so wrong to me. But to Koreans, they don't speak as if it's wrong. It's the same thing. I mean, white people getting tan, it's okay, but you know, African Americans, apparently, it's not okay, right? I mean, I don't know why. Your skin becomes darker. Apparently, it looks sexier. It looks much more toned down. But for some reason, in the United States, because a lot of the U.S. soldiers I worked with, they like getting tan. Most of the white guys, they like getting tan and stuff like that. But I don't understand why they don't like why skin discrimination is still a thing. If they like getting tan, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, like I had a friend like that as well. I had a friend who was like, "Oh, I don't want to get tan because I don't want my skin to be darker and black." It's like, what is wrong with that?
I know, right?
I mean, I think it's up to the individual's preferences, but it's just wrong to judge other people
Yeah.
based on your perspective. And in terms of women, being better, like looking brighter. I think it's what the Korean media. That's where the Korean media played
lot
like a
portrayal.
big role when portraying actresses through
Yeah.
media. It's like even the lighting system, it's
Yeah.
different. So it makes the actresses to look whiter.
Yeah, I think, I mean, maybe similar to the like drops in an ocean thing. I think this is maybe something that will change
It's a
over.
good thing I used that metaphor.
Yeah, you
You
know.
guys are free to use it.
Yeah. Maybe it's like over time. And like even what we were saying before about this idea of like a person who is Korean looks like this, like has this color skin. That's not necessarily true. But yeah, it's really interesting because that like idea of whiteness being associated with being good or being beautiful or being more wealthy. I mean, that's existed for a while. It's like that in India as well. If you're lighter skinned or fairer, you're like, it has good associations. There's like a lot of whitening creams and stuff there too. But yeah, it's just interesting. I wonder if it's something that will change going forward because I do notice there are more people either on social media or celebrities who are wanting to be darker now, but then also that has its own problems because I don't know if you guys saw this. There was a brand who the pictures of their model who's Korean, they like darkened her skin a lot to look like she basically almost looked black, and they cut her face out, or like they cut her face out of it too. So they didn't hire a black model, but they thought that clothes would look better if her skin was darker. So they altered. You know, there's like blackfishing. That's kind of a term these days. So people are kind of, you know, also like. I guess it could kind of seep into the cultural appropriation way too. Like, oh, you thought this was bad until now. It's cool to be like these. There are a lot of famous black celebrities, and you want to emulate that. And now it's a trendy thing to do, even though before it was like very discriminated against. So I don't know. I guess it's just complicated.
Yeah, there's a lot of complicated stuff in the world.
It's about time for us to wrap up today's conversation. Thank you for those who might be listening to this through Anchor FM right now. I think Professor Hyung-shin is going to listen to it as well.
Oh.
Thank you.
No.
And thank you, Dong and Kelly, so much for your interesting stories today. Updates on our next session will be shared on our Instagram at Creative Soul Sessions. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.